and welcome to another episode of the DTF Podcast. It is your host, Rob Dosser. I am joined by my partners in crime, the one and only John Fanta, who is currently sitting in the lobby of a Courtyard Marriott in Providence, Rhode Island. There's no place better. And Fanta, we have some big breaking news to share on this podcast. The third member of our team, the one and only Terrence Oglesby, the best shooter to ever come out of the ACC, Clemson's finest, is now officially a Big East guy.
Big East guy.
How do you feel about
East
that?
Guy.
Got him on board, baby. Big East guy. Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about.
Huge Big East guy. I've never seen anybody in a Courtyard Marriott in a better mood in Rhode Island than John Fanta after these past 4 games, man. How good has the Big East been? Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. The surprise of college basketball, the conference 26-2 to start the season. And for a league that only sent 4 to the NCAA tournament last year, we would all agree that heading into this season, there were a lot of questions being asked about how would this league shape up. And what we have seen is programs with a DNA, an identity of the way they play, programs with damn good coaches, coaches that either brand new in the case of Shaka Smart at Marquette, we'll get to that, or coaches who have stayed around and now call that place home, like Kevin Willard in year 12 at Seton Hall when he's done there. We'll get to that too. The Big East Conference has made the statement of all statements to start this college hoop season for the good. This is how on Selection Sunday, if there's a debate going on in the committee room of 5 teams from this league, 6 teams from this league, even 7 teams, this is how you get bids as a conference. This is how you build your profile. And what we have seen, all 4 underdogs, some of them healthy underdogs, coming up huge and winning games that are very, very difficult to win, especially in the second week of the season. The Big East having a banner 48 hours. Terrence Oglesby, welcome to the Big East guys. And I was so excited about this that I flew all the way to Providence just to be in a Courtyard because Providence is where the Big East was founded.
That's big time stuff. That's big time stuff, man. I don't even have anything to come back with except for, man, I love Seton Hall.
It's my kind of conference because it was founded over pasta and meatballs.
There you go.
Rhode Island. It was
There you go.
That's all you need to know right there.
That was over an Italian meal, Rob.
All right, so let's talk about this Seton Hall Michigan game. First and foremost, your point about how good this is for the league, fan, that should not be something that is overlooked. When it comes to NCAA tournament time and when it comes to the computer numbers that are required to be able to earn yourself an at-large bid, having these non-conference wins and the performance in non-conference is massive. As they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. This win that Seton Hall just had at Michigan is going to go down as one of the best wins in college basketball this season. Yes. Whether Michigan ends up a top 15 team, a top 5 team, whatever it is, that is a road win against a great program. I don't know that there are going to be 10 road wins against teams that are ranked better than Michigan all season long. What that's going to do is it's going to raise Seton Hall's computer numbers. Every time a Big East team plays Seton Hall after the fact, it's going to look better in the metrics. Same thing for Marquette landing that win over Illinois. It doesn't matter that Kofi Coburn's not there. That's not going to be relevant in the net. That's not going to matter in Ken Palm's algorithm. So that's going to raise the number that Marquette is. So instead of maybe being like an 80-ish kind of team in those rankings, maybe they're 50s or 60s. That means every time you play them, suddenly, a road win against Marquette, if they're in the top 75, that's a quad 1 win instead of being a quad 2 win. And when they break that stuff down at the end of the day, that stuff matters. Specifically, though, I do want to talk about Seton Hall. We've teased it on this pod for a while that is a team that is going to be a sleeper. That is a team that people need to pay attention to. The length, the athleticism, the toughness, the defense. T.O., I know from your text last night that you were blown away by this team. I don't know how much you saw them before the season started, but like, what are your first impressions? What are your takeaways? Give me everything you got on the Fighting Kevin Willards.
The length, man. The length of that squad. And, man, they went up against a Michigan team that was really big as well. But their switchability, 1 through 4, and then probably the best rim protector. What did Obiagu end up with blocks-wise? He had to have had, he only had –
They gave him 4 blocks. They gave him 4 blocks. It was definitely higher than 4 blocks.
Yeah, it was higher than, and he disrupted a lot of shots too. Like after that first half, guys were a little bit more hesitant to get in there. I really like Roden. I think the Paul Pierce comparison that they kept throwing out there, I think that's a little much because Paul Pierce is a dude. Like, that's a little much. But he is a really good player that could be an NBA basketball player very soon. I will say this. For Seton Hall to be as good as what I think they can be, two things have to happen. That version of Bryce Aiken blew that game open in the second half. I know there were a lot of other factors, but his ability to get into the paint when he was healthy with his quickness and ability to really handle the basketball, it was really fun to watch. He's just so shifty. He's got a certain smoothness about him off the dribble. He's a guy that can get in there and pitch out, and he doesn't overdo it when he's in there. He's an X factor. He needs to stay healthy. Another thing, guys, like they got a lot of guys. Obiagu needs to be some kind of offensive presence. He doesn't have to be a huge offensive presence, but he has to be reliable. They tried to throw it to him on a couple of rolls, and he turned it over. He's got to at least be reliable as a finisher around the rim. You don't have to throw it into him. And matter of fact, don't throw it into him. Like, just don't. But he's got to be somebody that can at least catch and dunk, catch and quick finish. Because without that, they're driving to the basket to get some of these things. But those two guys, if those two guys turn up to a point to where I think they can, I think Obiagu can do that. Just catch and finish. Dunker spot, catch and dunk. He can do that. Bryce Aiken's got to stay healthy. If that team stays healthy, they not only make a run at the Big East, but, man, who are they going to play in the NCAA tournament in the first round that they're not going to be able to play with? Like, from a league's perspective, if Richmond, he didn't play great last night, but he was there and playing good defense and switchable and all that stuff.
To me, he's the difference maker, right? And
I think Aiken's the difference maker.
Well,
because they don't start him.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But Kadari Richmond is the guy that could end up being a lottery pick on the team. Bryce Aiken kind of is what he is, right? You're going to get him for 20 games. You know that when he comes in, he's going to be kind of a microwave off the bench. I think you could say the same thing about Trey Jackson, though, who had 13 off the bench last night. Jameer Harris had 8 off the bench. Like, they got 34 points from their guards off the bench. Kadari Richmond did nothing. He is the guy that takes that defense from being really, really good when you have one of those little guards on the floor to being like unfuckwithable when he's on the floor. And you have 4 guys that are 6'7" with length and athleticism with Ike Obiagu at the rim. If you can get him to be something of like he was a 0 last night offensively. Let's just call it what it is. He was bad. If you can get him being the guy, he didn't even need to be a lottery pick, man. Just get him being like a plus contributor on the offensive end of the floor, Fanta. To me, that's what takes this team from really, really good to like, well, I think Villanova is going to have a fight on their hands. Big East guy here. Big East guy here. Yep.
Lottery pick talk is ridiculous.
Hey, look,
it's ridiculous.
I hear you.
I love you. I love you, Doster, and I love the Heat right now. We're bringing the Big East, but lottery.
I hear you, but
he's not that. He's not that.
That's what I'm saying is that if you watch the way that he can pass, so you watch the way that he can make the reads off ball screens, and he ends up adding the jump shot at his size and length, like there are some.
A lot of ifs.
Non-insane Shai Gilgeous-Alexander comparisons. But what he was last night, he shouldn't have played yesterday over any of the guys off the bench. And be able to be talking about like first round pick stuff, you're right. That's a little too much right now. Fanta, I keep cutting you off. I know you got something to say. I see you over there. What do you got?
Well, I think let's look at the knowns here with this team. Let's look at the knowns before we get to those variables here. Because let's face it, they beat the 4th-ranked team in the country.
Yes.
Last night. So when you say like for them to be at their best, let's look here in the now. In the now, this team was down double digits at the Chrysler Center, at a sold-out Chrysler Center with 14 minutes on the clock. Then they're down by 8 with 7 minutes on the clock. And they did not give in. They did not give in. Their ability to hold Hunter Dickinson to 1 made field goal in the final 15 minutes of the game is nothing short of outstanding defense and a will. And that's a credit to Kevin Willard, who is a Rick Pitino disciple. He coaches up defense. Seton Hall played outstanding defensive basketball. This was a high-level college basketball game. It was not a particularly outstanding offensive college basketball game. In fact, at times, offense was a little bit tougher to come by. The deflections, the length. This team is 22nd in average height in college basketball and showed it in this game last night. They do have a professional. Forget the lottery pick on Richmond for a second. They have a professional who I think will get his name called probably in the second round of the draft. Jared Rhoden is playing like a pro. and drove the basketball to the rim like a pro. And I want to put things in perspective for a moment here before we get to some of the other variables with this team. Seton Hall from 2002 to 2020 had one NBA draft pick. His name is Isaiah Whitehead, lifted the Pirates to a Big East title in 2016. They're now on the cusp of having an NBA draft pick in back-to-back seasons with Mamu Kelashvili and Roden. This is a school that, frankly, guys, it's not an easy job. You're trying to recruit to Newark, New Jersey. Let's look at last night. Like when everyone says Big East, Big Ten, here's the facts. I have a degree from Seton Hall University.
Oh, I couldn't tell.
The enrollment of the university is 5,900 undergrad, 5,900 students undergrad. The enrollment of Michigan undergrad is 46,000. You're not talking about, this isn't on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Juwan Howard gets a contract extension before the game with football money.
Yeah.
This was the statement of all statements 32 years after that controversial 1989 national championship game. Don't tell me it doesn't matter. The players knew it mattered. The fan base oozing in South Orange, New Jersey, as much as oozing can be. It's an outstanding win, and it's a testament to Willard, who seemingly makes things work a lot via the transfer portal. Trey Jackson coming in from Missouri, Aiken coming from Harvard.
Trey Jackson played his ass off.
And look, in the long term, here's where I look at Rob's point on Richmond. Seton Hall got nothing from Kadari Richmond last night and beat Michigan. That's not going to be the case come January and February.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why this team is especially intriguing, only because, T.O., the one concern with Aiken always is he has dealt with injuries throughout his career, and so it's kind of an X variable. You don't know exactly what you're going to get. Richmond is someone who, if he could be that variable that swings them from being a good team to being a great team that could make the second weekend, and who knows from that point on.
Yeah, I want to say two things, and I'm going to throw it to you, T.O. First and foremost, this is what you expect a Seton Hall identity to be on a basketball team, right? Like you mentioned, Fana, this was a great basketball game. It was not a pretty offensive game. Like if Seton Hall is going to win basketball games, that's what they have to do. That's what their program has to be. And I think that's what Willard recruits to and coaches to. I think he understands like what it has to be. And two, your point about how tough of a job that is, like he was almost fired 5 years ago. Jeff Goodman talks about this all the time. Willard's talked about this before. He was very close to losing his job because of the way that he started at that program. Then he went out and I believe he hired, I can't remember the guy's name.
He hired Tiny Morton.
That's what it was. Yeah, he hired Tiny Morton. All of a sudden, he got that class that was Isaiah Whitehead and Delgado and Rodriguez and like the who was the
you got Rodriguez, Delgado, Whitehead, Kadeem Carrington, and
yes, Carrington.
And I got to bring this up on the recruiting aspect. This is a really interesting lesson, I think, for a coach anywhere in the sport. Okay, so I was talking with a couple of coaches at Summer League this past summer. And we started to talk about Kevin Willard.
Right.
And a couple of coaches said, talking with Kevin, throughout his first couple years at Seton Hall, was trying to be someone and trying to do something that he wasn't. Sometimes coaches get away from who they actually are.
Another coach in that league is doing the same thing, but now he's back to who he is. But we'll get to that.
Right, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Kevin, when you get that, sometimes when you get put up against the wall, in other words, hey, it's time to start winning. We're going to stay with you. Obviously, they did. But you've got to figure out a way to get this right. Sometimes that forces you to say, F it, I'm going to be myself. It's now or never. I either got to get this right by being me or I'll just go down. I'll go down with it. And what he's done is when he takes a recruit on a visit, he drives them through Newark, New Jersey. And he says, this is what we are. This is who we are. This is not the glamour. We do not have an 80,000 seat football stadium. We're not Villanova. We're Seton Hall. This is where you're going to play your games at the Prudential Center in Newark. If you've been around there, you kind of know what it's like. And he basically says, we are not the perfect, majestic castle of a university. We are Seton Hall. We're going to breed on toughness, defense, length, and we're going to beat teams the way that we want to play in that not so pretty, but we're going to find a way to win. He's embraced what this is, and he's embraced who he is. And that's allowed this program to just be who they are. They know who they are. And in college basketball, when you know who you are and you have experience, you're going to win a lot of games in this sport. And that's what Seton Hall has done.
I'm sick of the Newark slander on their beaches there. It's beautiful there in Newark. Like, what are we talking about? No, it's a tough crew. I love their makeup. And you can tell they kind of exude the kind of person that Willard is. Just tougher than shit, in your face, kind of like we're gonna physically impose our will on you. And I'm not sure Willard can do that because Willard's not the biggest guy in the world, but his players sure as shit can. And it was a really fun game to watch if you were a hoop head. It was just a grinder all the way down to the bit. They had trouble in the first half with the length. I think that's a big thing to point out. I think there was a point in the first half where Michigan was up like 14-2 in paint points. Mm-hmm. It was like 20-21 or something.
Yeah.
And Seton Hall shot the piss out of the ball early. And here's the thing. The reason I say Aiken was he provides – I'm big on this, but change of pace.
Agreed, Tio.
Change of pace. Because you have all these big switchable defenders, not really quite the jitterbug that Aiken is when he's really feeling himself. And he was feeling himself last night. There was a couple of times where he got over there on the 45 and he was kind of toying around with the ball screen and he crosses up and he goes baseline. Like he was feeling pretty good last night. He's that guy who can get into the paint consistently. And I think him being able to do that with quickness, I think Richmond can do it, but he's going to bully you to do it. So you're not going to create as much help because he's still going to have a defender on him. When Aiken was getting by, he was alone for a second. And then he was able to get Diabate to come in, Dickinson to come in, and then things kind of happened. I think he's the X factor. Obiagu, you want him to be good enough offensively. You don't need a ton. But I think Aiken, like that change of pace is what's going to take them from third or fourth in the Big East to potentially winning the Big East. And I don't say that lightly because I still think Villanova is very good.
Yeah, we'll get into the conversation about Villanova in a second. I do want to ask you real quick, T.O., just what's your take on Michigan? Are you concerned about them? Was this just a team with a new point guard and two freshmen that kind of struggled a little bit against that physicality? Where do you stand on Michigan right now?
Somebody tweeted out that Caleb Houston's good enough to get you beat. I'm not sure that's the case. I still have faith in him because this is a young player in his third collegiate game playing against some grown-ass men at Seton Hall. So I don't want to write that kid off just yet. I mean, I still like the makeup of Michigan, and I really like what they bring off the bench. I love Diabate coming off the bench, guarding the four, switching. His length and athleticism, his ability to slide on the defensive end is really, really good. And a transfer, it's Jones is a transfer before I freaking make myself look like an idiot. That guy, he barely 6 foot tall, 11 points, 12 boards.
Tough. There were a couple plays down the stretch. There was a turnover in there.
But they're not in that game without
100%. And the biggest point that I was going to make is that there are some things that they had to clean up in the final minutes of that game. But that was more Seton Hall made some plays to, I don't want to say like steal a win, but get a win where Michigan was the better team for probably 32 of the 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And Michigan just has to figure out a way to close games. I think that will come with Caleb Houston. I think that will come as you kind of get the Diabate kids some more minutes in there. And that will come when you don't have a guy that is bigger than Hunter Dickinson guarding him.
But I think also this shows why the Big Ten has struggled in the tournament.
Yes.
Because what happens is if you're low scoring and teams are able to keep it close, you make yourself susceptible to losses that are dirty. Like if you look, I feel like I bring this up all the time, but like if you play a slow pace and you find a couple of guys that can hit some shots at the end, Virginia, whenever they lost to UMBC, like if a team makes it ugly and they can shoot the ball, like those games, the margin for error is very, very small.
Yep.
And with matchup issues that the Big Ten has, and it's not just Michigan, Purdue has those matchup issues. Everybody's big in that league. Like that's why you run into some problems.
Fanta, you were courtside. You got anything to say about Michigan? Any takes?
Yeah, I think that this is a team that to go 3 for 15 from three, they never looked in rhythm out on the perimeter. And they lost the game by 2 points to a very, very good team, a team that's getting underrated. So, look, Hunter Dickinson in person, TV doesn't do this talent justice. You know, and I think for Michigan, look, they were stunned last night. Like that, they played through Dickinson so much in the first half, and then early in the second half, they got him looks. He was rolling, guys. He is absolutely incredible at making the right reads. I think he's a terrific passer, Hunter Dickinson. I really love the way that he can pass the basketball. Him and Brooks alone, Michigan's always going to have a chance. Like, that team's not going to get blown out this year. I'd be confident in saying that. Caleb Houston had a freshman night. He had a freshman night that freshmen can have. He shot 1 of 9 from the field. He's going to be fine. That kid oozes with potential. You got to make shots. Last night wasn't his night, you know. But I think Michigan long-term, I still really do trust them. I thought last night was a case where Seton Hall, second week of the season, motivated as all get out. You know, you get Michigan now and you cash in now against these teams. That's the other thing. Like, it's November. That's why these Gavitt games are so valuable. These teams are both going to be different in their own ways in January and February, and who knows what happens with Michigan. I thought Michigan's youth showed. I thought their youth showed in this game with how early it is in the season. Big game, bright lights. I thought some of their kids just had a tough night from the field.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that there is a lot of turnover on that Michigan roster in terms of players. They lost last season and new people coming in, and sometimes it takes a little while to get that stuff figured out. And again, they played pretty well for the first 32 minutes, and they just kind of ran into Bryce Aiken getting hot and the team really guarding. All right, I want to pivot.
Can I say one more thing? Just one more.
Let's go. What do you got?
You said it the other day. You weren't sure. I can't remember what player it was. You weren't sure if it was so much what Seton Hall was doing that Michigan. Who was it?
It was Ty Washington.
That's right. Okay, so here
Ty as much as it was Duke's defense.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of go the same direction with Seton Hall. It's like, well, they couldn't shoot the ball. There's a reason they couldn't shoot the ball. The reason they couldn't shoot the ball is because they didn't have to help as much on Dickinson because Obiagu's down there battling his butt off the last little bit. And then on the perimeter, when he's trying to skip out, Seton Hall has so much length to close out that it's going to make it tough, even in catch and shoot situations that are semi-open. Like, they weren't wide open like they're going to be against other teams this year, especially with smaller players. But Seton Hall, man, because of that size that we talk about, their ability to close out on shots on the perimeter is like they're going to be so good defensively all year just because of that length. And because, man, they get to spots defensively. Like, they're so fast and athletic and big. And it's one thing after another, and they're so switchable and they close out so quick.